Yesterday's show had almost nothing in common with the show I had originally scheduled. And it all changed from 8 o'clock the previous night and then into the next morning. It was a salute to my phone. Without this thing right here, yesterday would have been you folks staring at me and Matt Harvey for 2 hours while we drooled, because that's how many cancellations we had because of this stomach thing that's going around. And I've been rescheduling guests for the last 2 weeks because of it, as we welcome in our Friday 4 today. The Admiral back from the first segment. Bill, you were about to say?
No, I was going to say, thank goodness for telephones. Otherwise, we would have had to look at you and Matt Harvey for the full 2 hours.
You don't want that.
We don't want that. We thank goodness for the telephones.
That's the reason why people have jobs, so their families don't have to stare at them for that long.
Yeah, without that possibility, you would have been thanking goodness for the off switch. I'm sorry to say.
Thankfully, the mute button is always at my fingertips. That would be Larry Schultz. Larry, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Michael Carr, longest member of our crew here, senior member.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And you, for the first time in a long time, have a solo camera shot today, a one shot instead of the two shot.
Well, I hope I don't underdo my obligations.
Via telephone, Joseph Joey Torts for ready. Joe?
Let me add to this issue with this stomach bug. The last time I was in Martinsburg, I was up there for a mediation the beginning of March. And then I drove to my place in Pocahontas County just to check on things. And I developed the stomach bug while in Pocahontas County, undoubtedly dragging it with me from Berkeley County.
Oh, my.
And it delayed me getting home to Georgia from Pocahontas County because I was sick and lying in bed, unable to get up and just having that awful experience with the stomach bug. So it's been circulating around Berkeley County for quite a while.
Yes, it has. It's, as I said, I guess Gilstrap got it about a month or so ago on the way back from an author's thing in Virginia.
And he's the first one that I know of in the area that had it. So all of this problem we're having in Berkeley County, it lays at Gilstrap's knees now.
Good luck, Nebraska.
Yeah. Good luck, Nebraska. That's right.
Typhoid Gilly is what we'll call him from now on, right? So earlier this week, I'm watching TV, and I come across the late Richard Jeni. I don't know if any of you remember him as a stand-up comedian. He's an Italian dude. Real last name was Colangelo. He's a Brooklyn, New York Italian. And I happen to like a lot of Italian comedians. We share a culture, and I get their humor very much. Joe, I don't know, do you remember Richard Jeni, Joe?
Vaguely.
So this special was in 2005. In 2007, Richard Jeni committed suicide. He was a very bright comedian, and he was not afraid to stray into the political world. And he had no sacred cows. He skewered everybody, all right? So I actually, literally, while watching this, stopped it and then transcribed this particular segment of it because I think it applies today, even though the references are terribly dated because this was 2005, 20 years ago. It made me want to repeat it because you can look in our comment section, you can look at the things we talk about, you can just observe national media and see how we take sides on something, and we dig in because it's our side, and we're positive that we are right because we root for the uniform, right? And our uniform is the correct uniform regardless. And I want you to listen to this to see how silly this is 20 years later in many cases. And then think of the conversations that you get into every day, and 20 years from now, how silly they might seem. They might not, but they might, okay? So he gets into this. It's going to offend everybody on both sides, all three sides, because that's what he does. Here we go. As soon as you start talking about politics, that's when people get ticked off, because a lot of people are very extreme. And I didn't play the actual thing on air because it would be a copyright infringement. We'd get our show taken down on social media. They're very sure of what they believe in. They're either on the far right or the far left of politics, you know. And if you're on the far right or the far left, you know what you've done now. You've gone too far, because that's where you find the extremist wackos way out there. After that 9/11 thing happened, I got so mad I said, that's it. I'm becoming a hardcore, hard-ass right-wing effer. I'm editing there as we go along. So you run all the way over to the far right side, and there they are. There's your right-wing crew, A bunch of money-grubbing, greenhouse gassing, seal clubbing, oil drilling, Bible thumping, missile firing, right-to-lifing, lethal injection hypocrites. There they are. There's your crew. There they are, people whose idea of a good time is strapping a dead panda to the front of a Navigator and running over everybody in the gay parade. I can't deal with them. Get out of here. I'm going over to the left side to deal with all these loony, lefty, liberal people. And there's the crew. A bunch of bong-smoking, America-bashing, flag-burning, yoga-posing, incense-burning, dolphin-saving, salmon-eating hypocrites. There they are. Here's your crew. These are the sensitive liberal people who are always yelling about everybody's freedom of speech and expression. Unless you happen to say something that ticks them off. Then they can't wait to tie your butt to the back bumper of a Toyota hybrid and drive it to the Berkeley campus and drop your carcass in front of the Fidel Castro building for the continual studying of why America sucks. Lunatics. The only place that makes sense to me, I think, is a little more moderate. In here, right? The centrist. The middle. Like me, yeah. A bunch of flip-flopping, fence-sitting, half-out, half-in, half-ass, non-voting, so they can complain no matter who wins people. But the ones who annoy me slightly more than all the rest of us are the trillionaire, bleeding-heart liberals. People are going to change the world if they have to spend every buck of your money to do it. The limousine liberal people. People living in a mansion that's got 20 rooms that nobody's in, air-conditioned. Got a pool that nobody's in, it's heated. Flying across the country on a 20-person jet all by themselves because they don't want to be late for a speech about energy conservation. That was Richard Jeni 20 years ago. I hope you can find some humor in that, and I hope you keep that in mind as we go through the comment section today on the program, and you start firing labels at other people because of something that they said. And oftentimes the label's inaccurate because maybe one thing that they said isn't something you agree with, but maybe 95% else of what they say is. But still you want to put them in that label, in that silo that says, you're a liberal, you're a right-wing wacko, because of one thing that they said. Maybe the other 9 things don't fit that description.
And the interesting thing about then and today is that bulk of the people feel that they are in the center, that it's the extremes extend beyond them one way or the other. And yet they, in many ways, are one of the extremists.
And Joe, with that, you get to lead off the program once again as the leadoff hitter.
Yeah, not only do I hear the humor in what you said, Rob, I also hear a lot of truth. So
Yes.
that's what's interesting.
That's what makes humor funny. There's got to be some kernel of truth in it.
Rob, while I was watching and listening to your very good segment with John Hardy and I believe Steve Catlett earlier this week.
Eddie Gokenhauer.
It was John. It was Gary Wine and John Hardy.
John Hardy,
Yeah.
that's right, Gary Wine. Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
But I was listening to that segment and was amused while they were justifiably wringing their hands over how the states tried to usurp all the tax money from these microgrids. John Hardy made a statement that really kind of rankled me a little bit, and that was that, look, the state's goal here in getting this tax money is to apply more of it to a reduction of the PIT, personal income tax. And I know this is going to get Mike Carl going, so that's great because I think we need to have a discussion about this. And I'm going to go back to what the governor said earlier this year in his State of the State address. After citing the horrible statistics that we know exist for West Virginia's educational system, the governor said, quote, "We will make sure teachers are paid competitively with those of neighboring states. We will attract and retain the best educators. We must reward them for their commitment and excellence." And then he goes on to say that during my inaugural address, I spoke of paying teachers more competitively with other states we touch. Good teachers are the heart of any educational attainment strategy. And he goes on to make other commitments about making sure that not only teachers, but public employees across the state are paid competitively. And he needs to do that because the latest study that I could find regarding public employee compensation rates in the state of West Virginia, it's a 2021 study by the Government Org Committee of our legislature. indicates that, quote, our state employees are distressingly uncompetitive with private sector and surrounding states' compensation levels. Distressingly uncompetitive. The statistics in that study shows that West Virginia is last in terms of the median income that all public employees get. So you might question, how are we going to attract not only better teachers, how are we going to retain teachers that we already have? How are we going to get public employees to work in state agencies if we're not paying them? So the question I have this morning, knowing that not only are we suffering comparatively with other states regarding the rate of pay for public employees, we know that there's a train coming down the tracks for West Virginia. We've talked about this earlier on other shows, how actions of the federal government in terms of cuts to Medicaid, in terms of some of the reforms that are being done with federal agencies that result in NIOSH losing over 200 jobs in Morgantown, that the tariff policy that results in an aluminum factory that was in Fairmont for over 100 years having to close at the loss of another 200 jobs. We know that train's coming too. So is it pure folly? And this is my question. Is it pure folly for the state to be engaged in discussions about further cuts to PIT when we have so many financial stressors that exist currently in the state of West Virginia? Or if some money is to be directed to the state from some of these microgrids that are located in the various counties, should we insist that that money go towards helping pay for some of these things that we have for a long time now avoided paying, raising salaries, making sure we're taking care of foster care, child care, and other issues that this current legislature has ignored? Is that where we should be focusing? And I think that's the question I want to pose this morning.
All right, I want to start off with Bill because as a former Berkeley County Commission president, he's had to make the county payroll and also figure out ways during a very challenging financial time as well to cut the budget. Bill?
Yeah, Joe, you're raising a very good point, and one that I can very easily become energized over. The personal income tax reduction, i.e. elimination, because that's a goal, is a politically attractive issue for the Republicans right now. They got a lot of mileage on it last session, and they're going to continue doing this. And I think the governor sees this as something that plays well with his base, and also plays well with many folks in the state. There's nothing wrong, I think, in having the goal of eventually eliminating the personal income tax. Where I find a difficulty with, and you alluded to it, Joe, is it gets in the way of some of the other needs that we have in the state. PEIA, crosswise, our child care, which they have done absolutely nothing to address.
Bill, when you say child care, do you mean child welfare or child care?
Child welfare, sorry, child welfare. And going to the county level, there's always been a reluctance to give home rule. Now I think there's reluctance. Hopefully they'll get over it this year. This 1% safety tax, or as one of our delegates said, he'd fall on his sword before he give 1% for recreational tax. What's the difference between the two? I don't know. But anyway, the counties are strapped, especially a growing county, trying to provide the services that are not only desired but are needed. The emergency services, parks and recreation. You go down through the list. The counties are in a real bind right now. The money from the microgrid could be a major boost for growth counties, or counties that are seeing this pressure from massive growth. But that's not going to be the case. The bulk of the money is going to go for reduction of personal income tax. Again, admirable, but I think it's a mistake to do it at the expense of the county or the municipalities, which have a lot of needs that more directly impact our citizens.
Michael Carl, former tax commissioner of the great state of West Virginia.
Well, a few points. First of all, when you reduce the rates of the income tax, the government revenues go up because it's actually a stimulus, and we learned that through the federal government recently. But the other thing is that we have too much government bureaucracy, employment, spending, and that needs to be at least a concurrent focus with the addition of resources to these programs you were talking about. So we absolutely have a wasteful, inefficient state government set up, and that needs to be a major focus if we want to free up resources for better and more important things.
Mike, when you reduce the income tax, there may be a stimulus effect while it's going down, but eventually it goes to zero. What's the stimulus effect with a 0%?
Well, you can't further reduce it. You can't get further stimulus from that. But
Right.
what you've done in the meantime is generate a market set up that generates more sales tax or more activity tax. That is a big deal.
Mr. Schultz.
Yes, as doom and gloom ridden as Joe's question seems to be, he was actually sugarcoating it. We're facing Medicaid cuts in this state that are going to badly damage our rural hospitals and, most of all, our nursing homes. Many people think that Medicare, the old people's insurance, I say that as an old person, Medicare is paying for nursing home care. No, they pay for 100 days of skilled care, and that's it. When it's either private pay on the part of these nursing home patients, or it is Medicaid. And once they've lost their house and everything they've ever owned and their kids get no inheritance, then they go on Medicaid. When that Medicaid gets cut, West Virginia, the only thing I've heard anybody say about it is, well, we'll just do away with the Medicaid expansion, people. A guy proposed a bill for that, and then they shelved the bill. We haven't even spoken about whether we cut state taxes or not, what's going to happen to our health care system if they cut Medicaid, which they are absolutely going to do. And so, I don't want to sound like somebody who thinks that the world is on fire, but it is deeply distressing. I asked about this on this show a month ago. Has anybody heard from any state legislator what the plan is when the Medicaid cuts hit? Because that's going to make the PEIA increases and the lack of raises for teacher look like child's play. We get an unbelievably high, I believe the number in West Virginia nursing homes is 76% of the money is Medicaid money, and we're paying 10% of that, and the feds are paying 90%. If they cut it, I don't know what these nursing homes are going to do, except that they will first start laying off staff, which will increase the danger to the patients in there, and then they will close their doors. How can we not have our elected representatives talking about this issue while they're talking about cutting state taxes? We can't afford to pay for this at the current tax rates. And I'm sorry, but the stimulative effect of a state tax cut is not even going to come close to addressing this. It is a tornado on our horizon, and we don't have a single person out there, maybe because of the stripping of funds from NOAA, we don't have a single person out there who is telling us at least to go in the basement. You don't wait until the tornado hits to say what you plan to do about the tornado. We seem to be doing that very thing here in West Virginia, and it will make all of these other problems look
like China.
minor. in comparison.
One addition, the conversation kind of reinforces my thought. The legislators take exception to this, but my perception is that the legislators have ignored the needs of the people looking for political wins. And I think this microgrid is a perfect example of that. An easy political win, but ignores the needs of the people as it can be best manifested with the counties.
Well, I salute the state's goal of eliminating the personal income tax. I think that's a good goal. Obviously, you don't want to ignore children and our elderly in the process of achieving that goal as the final result there. But I don't like the way they're doing it with this microgrid bill because of the way it's going to play out for counties and for those who own property adjacent to the land that's being taken. Right? This is, to me, an affront for anybody who's a personal property owner. If you own a house, a farm, land, whatever, and your land could be devalued instantly with no due process for you as a result of this plant going in beside your house, I just find that to be deeply disturbing as a property owner. Back to you, Joe, for the final three.
Yeah, I agree with that, Rob. I think there's a whole host of issues with the microgrid situation. The fact that the law as being proposed is set up to be a statewide eminent domain type program is really troubling. The waiver of some of the protections that have been in place to protect property owners in the name of economic development. I mean, that's a cost-benefit analysis that has to be more closely studied. I can't imagine. And you talk to some of our friends in Virginia whose property abuts some of these data centers. It's not all rosy over there in terms of what they have to experience. While it doesn't employ a lot of people, there's a lot of activity there, a lot of noise, a lot of light emission, and a neighboring property owner would have some real concerns. But the big picture here is I don't quarrel with Mike Carl's statement that cutting taxes has a stimulative effect in terms of revenues. I think it's been shown and established revenues go up. Whether they go up enough to offset the loss of revenue caused by the tax cut is another matter. And I don't know that sometimes we don't suffer the consequences there. The bottom line is this state has so many needs, and if you look at our state budget, the House just passed another budget yesterday. We are spending at levels that were seen in 2017 when you adjust for inflation. And imagine, how the cost of everything has gone up during that time frame. But we're spending at 2017 levels. So the stress is there. We're not meeting obligations that the state has and that only the state can cover, such as child care and such as foster care. There's actually a $30 million cut in foster care money in the current state budget. Who could justify that, given the circumstances we've discussed on this show about foster care? So I'm happy as the next guy if there's tax reductions on income tax, but at what cost? And I think the state has to closely look at what cost we're enduring in terms of the social fabric that we have in the state of West Virginia. There's so much we could be doing and need to do that we're constrained because of the lack of money.
The reason the state wants to cut the tax eventually to zero is to attract more population. But if you can't afford to pave the road outside of the neighborhood that you built for someone to move here, I don't know that they're going to stay.
Or schools.
Yeah, you got to have some services to keep the population that you want to move here. We'll see how this plays out. Joe, good leadoff hit. We're back with the Admiral on the clock. The stomach bug has claimed another. That's why we are Friday 4. Or we got doged overnight. I'm not sure which it was. They're cutting 20% of the workforce around here. So let's say good morning to the Admiral once again, Bill Stubblefield. Billy.
Good morning, Rob. Great to be here as always.
Senior member of our crew, longest tenured member of our club, Mr. Michael Carl.
Good morning, everybody.
Attorney at law, Lawrence Schultz.
Great to be here.
And before we go in this segment, I've been asked to pass this along from a good friend of ours, John Alderton. A shout out to Bev Hoffmaster this morning. She's retiring today after 34 years and 7 months with the Berkeley County School System. She's won many awards, including West Virginia Teacher of the Year, the Arch Cole Award, and the Milken Educator Award. Bev has impacted many students' lives as well as teachers as well. And it's 46 years total service, as I understand it, from John. So, John, thanks for passing that along. Happy to salute an educator in our system who is saying thank you. It's time to chill a little bit.
You know, John's very good about recognizing individuals and giving them appropriate praise and recognition.
Yes. John's second text is, I'd like to complain about this host of this show. He's been on for 15 years and he won't shut up. Is there a way we can replace the host of this show? John, there is.
Did you give him Hornby's number so he could direct it to Hornby?
Oh, he's got Hornby's number.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. All right, with our issue number 2, Mr. Stubblefield.
Issue number 2 is going to be dealing with our this session and the legislators. By most accounts, by a lot of accounts, including a lot of the legislators we've had on during the last 60 days, this has been a less than productive session. Little has been done, and we're getting to the end. Now, it's possible in the next day or 2 days, the floodgates open, a lot happens, but I don't think so. It is so a lot of the signature items did not make it through the, some of them didn't make it out of the gate, many did not make it to the finish line. In the State of the State address, the governor mentioned 3 or 4 things that he'd like to see have through. CON, repeal of certificate of need, exemptions for vaccination, economic development, economic growth. Well, the CON, certificate of need, and died very, very early in the process. Vaccination stayed, exemptions of vaccination stayed on until yesterday, and the lead sponsor in the Senate finally pulled the plug on that one. The only one that's really gotten through has been economic development, and that is only one, and that is a microgrid that we've talked about so much today. The others have not really developed legs. I have 2 questions today. My first question is this in part due to the frosty relationship that is apparent between the governor and the legislators? At the State of the State address, as the camera panned the audience, there's about half the legislators show some enthusiasm for his remarks. Others were literally sitting on the hands. During the first few days of debate, the rumor came out that the governor was actually in the committees doing some arm twisting. Not only the governor, but his wife was there as well, something that had not been seen before. The suggestions are that the legislators have taken some affront to the more aggressive role that the governor has played. So my first question is, has the lack of good substantive bills been in part due to this frosty relationship between the governor and the legislators? The second question is that the bills that have come through recently, at least pending as of this morning, the vaccination had been one, but that was put to bed last night. The other 2 would be gee whiz, I'm going a quick blank. Just a second. The microgrids, but the exemptions for vaccination, the microgrids, and the one I'd like to talk about is the change in the makeup of Board of Governors for universities and colleges. This is one that just kind of appeared out of nowhere. I have made the statement in the past that the legislators do not appear to trust the local element, either the county commission or any other local element. This is an example of that, where they say on the Board of Governors they are removing the voting representation for students, the faculty, and the staff. These folks represent the major demographics of the universities and colleges. Instead, what they propose to do is to expand the number of board members, but all governor appointed, not have any that would represent the students, the faculty, and the staff. Senator Rucker said this is in line with other Big 12 schools and would avoid a possible conflict of interest. If there should be a conflict of interest anywhere, I think it should be with the demographics of our school. She said it's not meant to attack anyone. They want a board to be more representative in doing what's the best interest of the institutions. This is from Senator Rucker. But I find it hard to imagine that we make it a more meaningful board by eliminating the voices of those individuals that are most directly affected, i.e. the staff, the faculty, and the students. Blue Ridge has 10 to 11 Board of Governors. Only 3 are the faculty, the students, the staff. The other 7 or 8 are all appointed with no direct affiliation with the university. Shepherd has 12 Board of Governors. Also, 8 or 9 are governor appointee. So my second question is, what purpose has been served to eliminate the voting input of individuals most directly involved with our schools and universities?
Mike Carl, you go first.
Well, I think there's a lot of challenges in this session, but one of them is that the legislature got used to a very passive governor for 8 years, and now they have an active governor, and he's clearly making a significant effort to engage and to get involved with issues that he perceives are important to the members of the legislature. But it's an overwhelming partisan Republican legislature, but there's some there's some misconception, there's some personality blockbacks. And so it's not. I think almost certainly now they're going to have to be an extra session later in the year to complete things that they're not going to be able to complete by midnight this Saturday.
Do you think it will yield the results that Governor Morrissey wants, though, Mike?
The extended session, yeah. I mean, that's why he'll call it, and because
he won't call it unless he has the votes, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah. I mean, he'll have enough of a postponement to work the members, to set up the support for what he mostly cares about.
What will that be, Mike? Just curious. What particular issue are you talking about?
I think there's all kinds of major issues. I mean, I guess I'm not certain. I think the budget's about to be approved.
Yeah.
But that's not enough, and there's pro business issues. But then I don't want to. I'm just like a little preview of my topic. There's signals from Trump about coal, so that could all play into a revised, updated agenda for the extended session.
Larry Schultz.
Yes, I don't doubt that there's some frostiness between the governor and the legislature. What really troubles me, though, is even if they were best buds and working together around the clock, it seems very clear that they're fiddling while Rome burns, or at least as Rome is going to begin to burn. The Department of Education is enacting huge cuts. The National Institutes of Health have already suffered giant cuts. That means that our universities, regardless of who's on the board of governor, are going to get less federal money. What are they prepared to do about this? And here we go again. I'm not hearing a single word from any elected state representative, from the governor all the way down to the roads commissioner, about what they intend to do. And until they begin to address the problems that are looming on our horizon, this legislative session, I agree that it is less active than they've been in the past, but this is going to do nothing to change the outcomes that are coming for this state in the face of these not only announced but already put up government cuts. You know, one of the topics we talked about with Mr. Allers before he got ill and didn't make it was the money for improving our educational standing in this state. There was a thing called regional educational laboratories from a congressional bill from 1965 that helped Mississippi move its reading rate from next to last to the middle of the pack 10 years ago. Those regional educational laboratories, including the one that helped the state of Mississippi, the REL Southeast at Florida State University, have been shut down. There are $336 million contracts for these 10 regional education laboratories gone. And so, you know, we're not going to be able to improve things based on whatever the tax rate is in West Virginia, whether it's enormously high or enormously low. There's not going to be enough money, and nobody seems to be. Everybody's looking. What tornado? I don't see that funnel cloud as it's roaring and the cats are flying past your head. I don't want to be a catastrophist here.
Too late.
But we're not paying attention to the loud signals of disaster.
Yeah, you're not paying attention to my question either, Larry. You went everywhere except my question.
Well, because it doesn't. I guess it doesn't matter too much to me which way they reserve this, whether they enact everything the legislature wants or everything the governor wants, because they don't want the right things. And so, if everything gets passed, it's still going to be a disaster.
What about the Board of Governors?
I think that's a kind of a minor issue, but I think they should keep hands off of that. I think you should have a rounded, larger segment of the community that has an opportunity to speak to these issues. Geez, maybe somebody would say, how about the National Institutes of Health cuts? What are we going to do? And I'm not hearing that out of WVU either.
The only thing missing, Larry, from your catastrophe scenario, and I'm going to help you finish this one, is that there's a tornado about to hit, but we'll never know about it because of the cuts they made to NOAA.
Exactly right. Yeah. The weather
I thought I already covered that.
Yeah. That's the only thing missing. I thought that was coming next. I thought that was your next line. Mr. Ferretti.
Let me. Bill presented two issues here, so let me take one at a time. The first one being the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of our legislature this past session. You know, historically, in off years, in terms of the election, 2025, no one's up for re-election in the legislature. This is when they do the heavy lifting. This is when some of the more controversial issues are addressed. It's usually in the election year when things are rather quiet and there's not a lot going on. So it is a little surprising to me, maybe shocking, that the legislature didn't do more or try to do more in an off year. And with respect to the governor, Mike, you were charitable in how you described the passivity of the previous governor. I might say derelict, yep. But that's me. But yeah, he came in with both hands working in terms of his dealings with the legislature, and I think they were taken aback by it a little bit. I think there is some resistance to him. He's still referred to as the man from New Jersey by some of the legislative leaders down there in Charleston. So they've got to bridge that gap. Now, having tried to pull some quotes from the governor's State of the State speech, I did go back and read the whole thing. And there's a lot of things that he proposed for this legislature this year that didn't get a whiff. PEIA he wanted that addressed, both a short and long-term solution. Nary a word about that. He wanted some sort of DOGE action at a state level, reorganizing state agencies. I think very little was done in that regard. there's a lot of things that he talked about that just weren't addressed at all. He did talk about, as I said, public employee pay. And again, nothing was done by the legislature. So in some respects, he was ineffective, and I think this legislature was ineffective. Now, with regard to the Board of Governors, I just think this is another heavy-handed way, and this was done in the state of Florida by Ron DeSantis. You make sure that certain voices at the university level, you make sure that those voices are not heard, that they're shoved aside, because you want to accomplish certain things at the secondary school level and at the university level. And that's what the state legislature is trying to do. I mean, why would you silence staff? Why would you silence faculty and students who probably have some good ideas about issues that are central to the functions of the university? Why would you do that? Don't you want more voices heard in a democratic society? So I just think this is part of it's a veiled attempt at controlling the universities. I don't think it's as blunt as what Governor DeSantis did in Florida, but I think the aim is the same, and that is to try to reshape these institutions in the mold that the current legislature wants to see.
What I'm hearing in off-the-record conversations is the reason with the governor in terms of difficulty with the legislature is the Washington, D.C.ing of Charleston government. And we saw this with West Virginia elections within the last cycle. Most of the elections, most of the races that we used to have were fairly civil. I think, Mike, you think back on your time in West Virginia, generally speaking, at the local level, they were generally civil. They might get more amped up at the state level, but they weren't anything like Washington, D.C. elections. Larry, maybe you agree, maybe you disagree from your time in the state. Joe, Bill, you guys have all been around here long enough. I've been working in the state 35 years, and I've been covering elections here since 1991, probably. I didn't see anything before like what I saw in the last 2 years in the way elections were conducted to try to get into office or get the incumbent out. And I'm told that this same technique has been taken into the governor's mansion and has been used to try to cajole delegates and senators to pick up the governor's agenda, run with it, pass it, let's get it going and move on to the next thing. And there's been a lot of blowback from people who have been around this state their entire lives who do not appreciate the Washington, D.C.ing of the Capitol. How many people run on let's clean out the swamp? We don't want that Washington, D.C. swamp in Charleston. It got brought to them, according to some people who have told me this off the record. This has been brought in. The governor's staff has a lot of D.C. people types who have come in and tried to run things. And they tried to run things in the way they understand how to run things in D.C. That doesn't work in Charleston. It's not working this time. It may work with this microgrid bill. I don't know. It may not. But it's failed him tremendously, it seems, on many of the other key issues he's wanted to get passed. People in the Capitol, they come from all around this state, and this state does not appreciate the way Washington, D.C. does things. I think they've spoken overwhelmingly in terms of who they've sent to office. So if you've been sent to office with the idea that we're not Washington, D.C., the last thing you want is a D.C. technique being clubbed over your head to try to ram a point through that you may have agreed with. But West Virginians will dig in. They will not succumb to pressure from you even if they agree with you, if they don't like the way you're trying to convince them. And this is, I think, the blowback Morrissey's getting, Bill.
Rob, to capture what you're saying, I think is child welfare. The Supreme Court recently, West Virginia Supreme Court recently said it's not a court issue. It is a legislator/administration issue. Mike Stewart was going to approach this, trying to resolve it in what eventually became Senate Bill 727 that really did not get legs. But one of the first witnesses was the governor-appointed Secretary for Health and Human Services. His response to Mike Stewart was, I know what I'm doing. I do not want any interference, any real input from the legislators. I am going to do it my way. Stewart, not to his credit, backed off that time. Now, Stewart eventually came back and picked up a backbone and said, we're going to challenge you on it. We're going to look into it ourselves. It never happened. But at least Stewart tried. But it was this conflict between the governor's office, the way they want to do things, and the legislators, I think, is the crux of the problem that you so eloquently identified.
Hey, Rob, let me echo, too, what you said, because I heard much of the same. And I'll tell you this, it's one thing for a lobbying organization to go to a delegate or a senator and say, hey, we need you to vote this way, and if you're not on board, we may primary you. It's another thing for that threat to come from the governor's office. And, what I heard was that there was a lot of heavy-handed handling by the governor's administrative staff vis-a-vis the legislature, and I don't think it sat well with a lot of legislators.
Yeah, Joe, that's the same that I've heard off the record. Mike Carl, you're shaking your head yes. I know you have a lot of contacts in the Capitol.
Well, it rings true. That's a good point.
Yeah, you got to have a different approach. When Justice came in the first year, he tried his specific techniques. We were going to bring business to how to run the Capitol, and you saw how
we're going to raise taxes on hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, you saw how that went over, right? It didn't, and the Governor Morrissey's now learning that as well. But he had 12 years in Charleston as the Attorney General. He saw how things operated. He's not as new to this as Governor Justice was. Justice had no political experience whatsoever. Morrissey had 12 years as the AG. So I'm a little puzzled by that technique, and I don't know if what we're talking about is accurate, and I have no reason to believe it's not, because it's coming from people who have a pretty good knowledge base on how these things work. I'm shocked that he would try this type of technique.
It makes you wonder if there's anyone at all on his staff who can credibly have the conversation with him. Here's how it is in West Virginia. Here's the culture.
It's a different
that
culture.
I grew up in and that I've worked in for all these years. And you're blowing it by the way you're dealing with these issues, which will become cultural when they start to include threats. And there's nothing that West Virginians at all levels of all political beliefs, nothing that West Virginians understand better than a threat and how to respond to it. For better or for worse.
It's a heavily armed state, baby.
Yes. And so, there's a tendency to say, easy, Tiger, back off of me. And when you have to do that to the governor and you're a leader in the legislature, then his agenda doesn't really ring true with you and doesn't carry much weight.
Bill, final thought is yours. Just a few seconds.
Well, I think this has captured what we've been talking about, that it's that there's an argument of the legislators looking toward short-term political gains or trying to benefit the public as a whole.
Friday 4 continues with issue number 4. Our co-hosts include Joseph Joey Torts Ferretti via telephone. Joe, welcome back.
Good morning.
Mr. Michael Carl.
Good morning, everybody.
The Admiral Bill Stubblefield.
Good morning, Rob.
The flu bug, which is part of our crew this week long as well. And with issue number 4, Mr. Lawrence Schultz.
Good to be here. I have just a question for everybody. You can give your reasons why for your answer. Where will inflation, unemployment, and the Dow be 1 year from today? Higher or lower? You can tell us why. I will say that recent inflation number came out at 2.3%. Unemployment, I believe, is at 4.1%. And the Dow is ballpark 39,600. So that gives you the marker for your prediction about April 2026.
And let me just say, as we are at 9:36, the market is open, and stocks right now look like this. The Dow is down 0.5%. The S&P down 0.33%. NASDAQ stocks are down 0.15%. That's about 1/7 of a percentage point at this time. So, Mr. Carl, nobody understands tax policy and the economy better than you, sir, from your studies and your position in the Nixon White House.
I don't know if that had much to do with it. I had some other experiences.
That's where he got his legal training.
He was H.R. Haldeman's right hand man.
That's where I helped fight the Vietnam War.
Go ahead, Michael. Your turn.
Well, I think there are a lot of interesting issues, but I think it's all of that. I think it's will be better than we are today. I think the unemployment and the inflation is getting in a reasonable level. And I think it's going to be even better. And I think that, and I'm really hoping and praying the stock market's going to come back. I mean, it was up there, and now, it's had a big trip. But I think overall it's, that's coming back. So that's my.
Let's get into the tariff stuff, because this is going to play a big part in where these numbers are in a year. Do you regard the tariff very fluid tariff situation that we are with, Mike, as a temporary disruption, or do you see it as more of a longer-term one?
No, I think it's temporary if you define temporary as not more than a year. It'll take some, the stakes are so big on all sides that it'll take a little time. But I think it's an interesting initiative, by Trump but I think in the long run it'll play out in a positive way for the U.S.
Joe? And you can include the tariffs in your discussion, by the way.
Oh yeah, and I'm hoping to get what my Carl's smoking, because I don't see quite a rosy picture here coming up. And let me give you some anecdotal evidence, because I fortunately my daughters are doing well and advancing their careers, and I'm hearing from them, because they're on the front lines of a lot of this tariff discussion and economic uncertainty. My one daughter works for a major apparel retailer, Fortune 500 company. She buys a lot of clothes that are sold in this country from Vietnam. And they buy them from Vietnam because they found out that Mexico was too expensive. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And the idea that we're someday going to have factories opening up so that people can show up to work and sew T-shirts is a fallacy. It is never going to happen. So when our president, who is a one-man band on this, apparently he's the one who's deciding all this, which is shocking to me, given that constitutionally the tariff power goes to Congress. But here we are, and he tariffs Vietnam tremendously, like we're ever going to have balanced trade with Vietnam, because they can't afford anything to buy from us anyhow. But regardless, here we are, and now where my daughter works at the headquarters in Columbus, Ohio, they're talking about laying people off and revamping their whole operation because of what's going on with tariffs and the uncertainty, where they cannot even plan ahead to next quarter and the next quarter after that, because they don't know what's coming out of the White House. So the impacts on unemployment are going to happen, and they're going to be for the worse. My other daughter's in a small medical office where they deal with patients who are elderly, on Medicare and Medicaid. A lot of the money comes through that office with payment from those two sources. And her schedule as an audiologist is greatly reduced right now. She doesn't see a lot of patients on the schedule because the elderly are concerned about Medicare and Medicaid and whether they're going to have the money to buy hearing aids and get hearing tests and deal with other issues with their hearing. So the impacts, at least anecdotally, with two of my kids are showing up, and they're going to be detrimental to this country. So this uncertain tariff policy, I think, is going to have a ripple effect that we're going to feel for many months in the future here, and I think they're going to be negative in terms of their impact on this country. Things need to change in a hurry. Somebody got to Trump a few days ago, perhaps it was Jamie Dimon or somebody, to reverse course. And I'm hopeful that this 90-day reprieve is going to allow him and others to figure out how to get out of this mess. But right now, it's a mess, and it's having impacts.
Bill.
Yeah, the inflation, the unemployment, this market, I think are all related, but yet they're kind of independent as well. Joe spoke to unemployment. I think inflation is going to be the one that we'll all be more and more conscious of. Starting with a couple of years or so ago with the Biden administration, we started making inroads with inflation, and we pulled it down to a reasonable level, and it continued under Trump. However, with these tariffs, I think by definition we're going to see an increase in inflation. If you have a 10% tariff on all products, that would translate to a 10% rise in inflation. I'm not sure how you're going to work around that without having an increase in inflation. The other issue that has not been on Larry's question is the stability. We hear that the market needs stability. That's right. But also our trading partners need stability. Throwing a 50% or tariff on European Union, thrown on our other trading nations. What is that going to do? That shows that we are not a trading partner that can be relied upon. We're not a partner that can be relied upon, regardless of what it is, military, NATO, or whatever. We're no longer reliable. Where are they going to go? They're going to start putting more and more trade with China, the one group we do not want them to go on. But I think Trump, with his tariffs, are driving other countries to take another look at developing more meaningful trading relationships with China. The last thing we want to do.
Larry, back to you.
Yeah, I think if you here's an example, I guess, that touches on this tariff thing. With the extremely high tariffs that are now in place on China and have not been paused. If you go to Walmart and they put a blindfold on you at the door and you wander off into the store and then stop when you feel that it's important to do so and spit in any direction as far as you can, what's the chance that what your spit hits is going to be a Chinese-made product? 40, 50%?
80?
Yeah. I mean, if you're in the vegetable section, okay, those might be from Mexico. But if you're not in the grocery side, you're going to hit Chinese product.
But isn't that Trump's point, Larry?
It may be his point, but if we make those things here, they will cost so much that no one will be in Walmart, blindfold or not. We buy those things from China because they can make them more inexpensively than us. And it allows for a better way of life. What I'm suggesting is if we take the one bargain that's out there for us, Chinese-made goods, and jump it by 145% or whatever the number is today, inflation's going to go through the roof, as Bill suggested. That will be closely followed by unemployment, if not preceded by unemployment going up, as Joe was saying, with his anecdotal experience from his family, that they're feeling threats about their job. I don't know how you pay extra for your groceries and your daily goods, your Walmart stuff, whatever that might be. I don't know how you pay for that when you don't have a job. And so I believe both of those things will go up, and certainly the Dow will go down when adjusted for inflation, at least. Yes, this is going to be really problematic unless, of course, this is all more of Mr. Trump's blufferitis, where he's bluffing about all of this. In which case, you got to wonder, why in the world are you taking the people of this country through this emotional roller coaster ride? That seems kind of insane. The prices will be higher. The unemployment will be higher. I believe the Dow will be, when adjusted for inflation, lower. And we will be, and there's still a lot of people saying that we will be in an actual recession. I'm not qualified to say at what point of these changes in these metrics that we enter a recession. But
interesting with the R word. This on CNBC's website, the financial website, breaking news. BlackRock's Larry Fink says the U.S. is very close to a recession and may indeed be in one now.
Rob, let me respond to a comment by one of our listeners, Eric O'Rourke, and it's the same thing that President Trump has been saying, that the threat of the tariffs already having result, and they always invoke Vietnam coming back and saying they're going to remove or reduce the tariffs. It's my understanding Vietnam's tariff was at 1%. 1% to begin with. So reducing from 1% to 0 is not making much, is not a major victory.
Issue number 4. With that, Michael Carl.
Let me just start by adding, because we had other members of our panel do this. My oldest son is an attorney in-house with U.S. Steel, and I strongly support what Trump's doing, even with that influence from my son. So, but the real issue that I want to bring up is that this week Trump had a big, press conference, I don't know what you want to call it, and advocated the increased production of coal in the United States as something that could really have a great positive influence on our economy. And in the audience, physically, of course, he's hard to miss. Is Senator Justice was there, but so of course was Senator Capito, and the governor was there, I think, and it was very positive and toward the increased production of coal in the United States, and obviously that has an influence in West Virginia. So I'm throwing that out for what do you think?
All right, Bill, let's go to you first.
Yeah, there was an article in a very nice article in the Post a couple of days ago about the steel and the tariffs regarding steel. And there's and for certain plants it's very beneficial, but for others such as the automobile industry, they are looking at it with more scant. So it depends upon which window you're looking through, Mike, and what the prism is. Certainly for certain groups such as the U.S. Steel, and they sell in U.S. Steel to Japan, that's not America first. That's putting money in your pockets, but you're selling a major company to Japan, which President Trump has endorsed. So I'm not sure what America first means in this case.
What about the coal question that Mike asked?
Well,
you pulled a Larry Schultz on him there.
Yeah, I did, because I did not really register what he said about coal. But let me give my impression. He's talking to his audience here. The coal industry is emblematic of his audience, and it's something that he can throw a bone to, and that is going to be very well received. However, there's another part of his audience that needs a bone as well, and that's the agricultural part. And these tariffs are working against the farmers. Now, what bone is he going to throw to the farmers? Probably the same one he threw in 2017, 2018, where they put a lot of supplemental extra cash directed toward the farmers to bail them out of the economic impact they had with the tariffs. So yeah, he's very skilled at throwing certain bones at certain audience and finding ways to keep that audience, that demographic, satisfied. And I think this is exactly what he's doing with coal.
Mr. Schultz.
Yes. With regard to steel tariffs, I think you'd find from our history that there have been, because steel's kind of an important product, and I think you'd find that there have been tariffs levied on steel from time to time in all kinds of different administrations. Small tariffs, not 145%, but enough to protect our industry. And I think it's a bipartisan agreement that some tariffs can sometimes be necessary to protect important American industries. We don't make our Navy ships out of cell phones. We make them out of steel. And so if you don't have a steel industry, your ability to gin up a Navy quickly is kind of destroyed. So sure, that kind of stuff's important. Putting tariffs on everything produced by a particular country is a different level, almost an insane level. I think that as to coal. There could be some benefit to West Virginia by an increased a capacity to drive the coal market a little bit, but I don't think that's going to make much difference to this outfit we call the United States of America. I don't believe that coal is ever going to make a total comeback in these days of global warming and climate change, so that we're going to be able to make America great again by increasing the profits of the coal industry. That could be an important thing for local people in West Virginia, some of them, but I don't believe that long term it makes much difference on a national scale.
Joe Ferretti.
Well, I always, my ears always perk up when I hear some national policy maybe changing regarding coal mining, because my great-grandfather and grandfather worked in the coal mines in western Pennsylvania. And I saw the ravages of that industry on them personally. So I'm always interested in hearing what policy is going to emanate from D.C. about coal mining. And what Trump is proposing is he's going to loosen regulations. He's going to open up public land for coal mining. And he's going to lessen some of the barriers to mining, which includes the regulations that deal with air toxins and discharge and coal ash and mercury and things of that nature. And he's doing it because we have a real policy debate here, and it's a legitimate one. We're going to have these artificial intelligence centers developed across the country, and they're going to have significant energy requirements to run. And how are we going to produce that energy? Where's that electricity going to come from? There's a real debate as to whether natural gas and renewables are going to be able to fill the void that currently exists in our electrical grid system to run these AI centers. So perhaps it is correct to argue that we're going to have to rely on coal, at least in the short term, to fill some of these energy gaps. So I understand that issue, and I think it's something that we're going to have to trust our leaders in government to figure out. But I'm always wary of the costs, the externalities that exist with coal mining. All you have to do is run around West Virginia and see all the streams polluted with mine acid, and to see vacant land that was stripped and not restored as it should have been after the coal mining operation ceased. And I can tell you from personal experience, with black lung and silica dust and all those things that these miners have to deal with, while they're standing behind Trump with big smiles on their faces and their hard hats, thinking that, boy, we're going to have more coal jobs. I hope they appreciate that it's Trump policies that resulted in the closing of the National Institute of Occupational and Safety and Health Administration, the very agency that promulgated rules and regulations for safety in the mines. Those people no longer work in Morgantown to do that kind of investigation and study to make sure that our miners are safe when they go underground. So, as always, it's a two-edged sword here, and I think we have to strike the right balance to deal with our energy needs, but also to make sure that the problems that mining brings about are dealt with effectively.
Final minute comes back to you, Michael Carl.
Well, all I can say is that Trump's new active position in supporting expansion of coal production is just one more reason why I support him.
Those are high-paying jobs.
Yes.
And heavily unionized.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
In this instance.
I didn't say it like it was evil.
No.
I wasn't taking a shot at it. That's fine. I'm glad you tolerate the union.
This will give new power and strength to the coal unions. You want to brag about that? Good.
Final thoughts. We start on the phone with Joseph Joey Torts Ferretti. First, go.
If you want evidence that the Pittsburgh Pirates are the worst-run organization in professional sports, look up the story about the commemorative bricks outside of PNC Park.
Larry Schultz.
It's going to be kind of nice this weekend after several days of rain. Get out there and enjoy it. It looks like Sunday's going to be your best bet.
Mr. Bill.
Yeah, session. They're closing session on Saturday night. What are we going to talk about for the next several weeks, Rob?
Mr. Carl.
I was premature in bragging about the Cardinals. Now they're only a half game ahead of the Pirates.
We took 2 out of 3 from you, baby. Yeah. Hey, sell the team, Bob. That's my final thought there. Dave Ramsey Show is coming up next. Have a great weekend. This is Talk Radio, WRI Martinsburg and TV10, and we'll talk to you again in 70 short hours.